and welcome to another episode of Paydirt Remote. I'm Dominic Piper. Today I'm joined by Salt Lake Potash Managing Director, Tony Surici. Tony, nice to see you.
Thanks for having me, Don. Good to be here.
You've had a busy time in the last few months putting together your Lake Way potash project up in the north of WA there. Feels like the WA potash sector has begun to flourish really out of nowhere in the last 18 months or so. How do you explain this growth and interest in the sector?
Well, look, I mean, it's got great thematics. We all know that. You know, the world needs food. The agriculture sector is very important to a growing population, and this potassium sulfate source, or sources plural, is being discovered around Western Australia. So you are correct. There are quite a few runners in the race that are moving or wanting to move into production, and I think that fair to say that we're certainly at the front of the pack there. The cost curve is quite unique for sulfate of potash, primarily because there is different methodologies of producing SOP. Ours is the natural primary production, where we abstract brine from lake aquifers and use the greatest energy source on earth, the sun, to make the harvest salts, and then a very simple process plant flow sheet. So that really supports a very, very low cost operation. All of the brine producers in the world and in WA will be in the lowest cost quartile just by the nature of the business processes. The high end of the cost curve structure, call it sort of 2/3 to 75%, is driven primarily because there is a methodology called the Mannheim process that's used to make SOP. But again, high input costs, heavy energy intensity through refining, and then some nasties to be disposed of at the other end. Another good thing about Lake Way, and what attracted me and the team to this in the end of 2018, was how well supported the Lake Way project is by existing infrastructure. I use the term it's smothered by infrastructure. It has the Goldfields gas line directly on the eastern edge of the lake. It's got the Goldfields highway directly on the western edge of the lake, and literally 500 metres from where our plant is being built. It's got the airstrip for the Wiluna Township on the north edge of the lake, and then obviously the Wiluna Township about 15 kilometres away. So very, very attractive from a support infrastructure perspective that helps fast track the process or the project, and supports low cost CapEx and low OpEx.
You say fast track the project, and it's looking at through the releases today and your progress in recent times, you really are fast tracking it. It's remarkable the pace that you're keeping at the moment. In starting to build a project, I assume a potash project doesn't really look like a base metals or a gold project. It's not a case of building a plant and digging a hole and then away you go. Can you explain to investors how it might be different to more traditional base metals projects they might be familiar with?
Yeah, it is very different, to all the base metals and bulks that I've been involved in, where you're sort of drilling and blasting and developing pits and building plants and building ROMs and then sort of pressing a button. So it's quite interesting and unique in its nature. And we intentionally set about fast tracking this project by staging it. So first and foremost, we wanted to get brine as fast as we could under the sun, because that's how we're making our ore. The brine goes under the sun, the sun does its job, the salts precipitate out, and that's your ore body basically. So you're ultimately creating that ROM feed, and we've been doing that for nearly a year now. So we say we started early last year, January. We hit the ground running. We constructed the first stage, 125 hectares of solar evaporation ponds in Q2 last year. We immediately filled those with brine. That has been now under the sun since March, April last year. We're rounding on that 12-month period, and we have harvest salts precipitating, and have for a very long time. We've then completed stage 2 of the project in Q4 last calendar year. That's another 275 hectares. So we now have 400 hectares of solar evaporation ponds commercially operating and producing harvest salts that will feed the plant. So again, we've been de-risking the construction through those stages. We've de-risked also the feed of the salts for the plant when we want to be commissioning that plant at the end of this calendar year. So very, very different. It's a much longer time frame, or a spaced time frame, not a longer time frame, but a staged, spaced time frame, where we're getting those, I suppose, longer lead tasks like the precipitating of the salts out of the way early.
Yeah, where does the capex expenditure fit into that timeline, that time frame? Then, when do you expect to see the big ticket items, the expensive items being paid for and developed?
We're down to building an $80 million Aussie process plant with 20 million Aussie dollars worth of NPI. We have started that. We're very, very close to completing our bulk civil earthworks. So when you think about de-risking, it's really stepping its way down in terms of what is still at risk there. And so in terms of the big spend, that's putting all the Lego pieces together in the plant this year, and we'll be starting to sort of ramp that up sort of middle of the year.
How does the current COVID-19 pandemic and obviously the effect that's had on markets, how has that affected your timetable and your timescale for development?
Look, the agricultural sector is strong. What's incredible is how resilient fertiliser prices are. The price of SOP has not changed for the last 3 months. It hasn't changed for the last 10 years barely, but it has been very resilient and just held a very steady line throughout the last call it 3 months that we've been riding with this coronavirus. So that really reinforces the specialty nature of SOP and the markets that demand it. Those fruit and berries and citrus and nuts and all those fancy things that need the no chloride SOP. From our perspective, we're into a period now of finalising engineering and procurement are the main activities, and then baseline operations of the commercial nature of the ponds on the lake. So it's a good time for us for this blip to come through.
How quickly can you hit your straps once you're up and running into production? Is it simply just producing a saleable product and then getting it out, or is there some of the challenges we've seen in some of these other commodities such as lithium and graphite where you have to try and match your product to your market?
You always have little bumps in the road when you're commissioning plants, but this is not a technical plant. No, there's no high temperatures or high pressures and acids and nasty things. So it's very, very simple in that nature. So we're expecting a rapid ramp up, as we've all experienced in our recent past lives. You basically plan a rapid ramp up and then you halve that schedule. That's your internal target, and that we'll be applying the same methodology with this one as we walk it into Q1 next year doing that.
You've got a big ground holding up there, and Lake Way is only the first of several lakes you've got in your portfolio. What sort of timeline have you set yourself for development of the other projects or prospects up there, and what work do you need to do?
So I jokingly say we're going to recreate the Pilbara of Potash, and in all seriousness, the lake portfolio of the 9 lakes that we have in the Goldfields region does lend itself to creating an SOP province. So we will gladly be replicating as the market can take the product. We'll be stepping across other lakes once we have Lake Way well and truly bedded in production.
Tony, it sounds like you've got a fantastically robust project and a project team and a company full of confidence at the moment. Best of luck with development of Lake Way and then the rest of the Salt Lake Potash story. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks very much, Dom.